What if the moon was made of cheese? This is one of those questions kids sometimes ask, usually while staring at the moon and holding a piece of pizza. But let's imagine it seriously. Suppose that instead of rock, craters, and dust, our moon was a giant ball of cheese, Swiss cheese to be precise, because it has holes and looks dramatic. First, the moon's mass would change drastically. Our real moon weighs about 80 billion tons. That's heavy enough to pull the oceans and give us tides. But cheese is way less dense than rock, about 5 times lighter. So if the moon were suddenly made of cheese, its gravity would weaken. That means tides on Earth would shrink. Coastal cities might celebrate fewer floods, but surfers would complain about boring, flat oceans. And without strong tides stirring the seas, marine ecosystems would change too. The moon doesn't just look pretty. It keeps Earth's oceans alive and moving. But wait, before the dolphins start packing their bags, something stranger happens. A lighter moon wouldn't orbit exactly the same way. The gravitational tug between Earth and the moon is like a delicate dance. With less mass, the moon would drift differently, and maybe even wander further away. At some point, it could slip out of Earth's gravitational grip entirely and float off like a lost balloon. Except, in this case, a lost balloon made of cheddar. Now, imagine the problems that would cause. Without the moon, Earth's axis would wobble like a broken spinning top. Seasons would become unpredictable. One year could have boiling summers and freezing winters. The next might have no winter at all. Humanity would have to invent new holidays like Survival Month, where the only tradition is not freezing to death. But let's not get too gloomy. After all, if the moon was made of cheese, we'd have other priorities, like eating it. How much cheese are we talking about? A sphere 3,500 kilometers across, made entirely of Swiss cheese, contains about 10 quintillion tons of dairy. That's enough to feed every person on Earth pizza and grilled cheese sandwiches for, well, forever. No one would ever ask, "What's for dinner?" again. It would always be cheese. Doctors, however, would not be thrilled. Heart disease rates would skyrocket, and hospitals would start offering cheese detox programs. Still, it wouldn't be that easy to eat the moon. Remember, it's 384,000 kilometers away. You'd need rockets, cheese mining equipment, and some serious freezers to stop it from spoiling on the way back. NASA would turn into the National American Snack Administration. Astronauts would no longer be explorers, but pizza delivery guys. Elon Musk would tweet, "Just launched the first mozzarella mining colony." Mars can wait. And here's the real kicker. If the moon were edible, people wouldn't stop at small bites. Governments would start carving pieces of it out. Pretty soon, whole nations would argue over who owns which crater. The United States claims the Sea of Tranquility, excellent for fondue. France demands exclusive rights to Brie Crater. International cheese wars would break out, not over territory but over recipes. But the moon is more than just a snack. It reflects sunlight onto Earth. Without its bright, rocky surface, nights would be much darker. Swiss cheese, full of holes, wouldn't reflect light as well. Stars would shine brighter, but the moon itself would look dim and yellowish, like a stale wheel of cheddar left too long in the fridge. Poets and songwriters would be devastated. Imagine Shakespeare writing, "It is the East and Juliet is the cheddar." Doesn't quite have the same magic. And then there's space travel. A cheese moon would be far less solid than our rocky one. Meteors that now crash into the moon would instead punch right through it, like bullets through butter. Over time, the moon might crumble into a cloud of dairy debris orbiting Earth. Instead of one big moon, we'd have a glowing halo of cheese bits circling the planet. Scientists would call it the mozzarella belt. Pizza restaurants would call it free advertising. But eventually, the cheese moon would rot. Cheese left in space might freeze, but cosmic radiation would blast it nonstop. It would dry out, crack, and release gases. Imagine looking up at night and seeing the moon leaking smelly blue fumes into space. Astronomers would have to issue reports like, "Warning, tonight's full moon may cause hunger, nausea, and cravings for nachos." So, what if the moon really was made of cheese? At first it would be delicious, then it would be dangerous, and finally it would drift away, crumble apart, and leave Earth wobbling like a drunken top. Tides would vanish, seasons would collapse, and civilization might struggle to survive. But hey, at least the pizza parties would be legendary. In the end, maybe it's better that the moon is just rock and dust. Cheese belongs on our plates, not in orbit. Otherwise, the phrase "say cheese" would never mean taking a photo. It would mean pointing at the sky.